Good evening and welcome to Real Talk with Sean, everybody. This evening, I have the pleasure of speaking with Gabe, and we're going to be discussing mental health as well as him being a recovering alcoholic. So, Gabe, I want to thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you accepting my invite.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. Before I even ask my first question, I want to let you know how proud I am of you for
Thank
recovering.
you.
I mean, that's a big deal. And the fact that I think it's very strong to notice when there's a mental health issue. I don't think it's weak to
Right.
have one. I think it's strong to notice that we have one. So I want to commend you on getting help with that. And as well, like I said, for being over 30 days free from drugs and alcohol.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely, absolutely. At what age did you even start to feel like you had a mental health issue?
Um, well, so for me, like growing up, I've always had like little cues. Like my grandma used to believe that like I had ADHD growing up because my attention was over there, over here, over there. Um, but growing up, like, so that's why I feel like my mental health always ties into my recovery and my addiction and my alcoholism is because of the fact that like I grew up being raised by my grandma, because my mom and my dad were both in the disease or like using at the time.
Okay.
Um, so being around like my mom and her drug friends or my dad and his alcoholic friends, like my anxiety has always been on one because I've been always like even as like a 5-year-old kid, I know that if they were going out with me to a gambling house, there might be a moment where I have to sit outside on the curb by myself for a little while. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so it just always I've always been on edge and had that anxious moment where I've just been ready for something to happen. Um, and then as I got older towards like middle school and high school, it became more like paranoia. And then the trusting people started getting a lot more scary. I didn't really trust anybody who wasn't really in my circle. And if you were trying to bring friends into my circle, I was like, we gotta have a sit down. I need to figure out who this is, what they're about, like so I can understand them. Um, so mental health, I think for me, like all my anxiety, my depression, all that started up as a kid.
Right.
Um, but I know for sure it did flip to 110% when my grandma passed when I was heading into senior year.
Yeah.
That's also when I started drinking and going out and partying. Because my grandma was basically my mom. You know what I
Right.
mean? So when she was out of the picture, it became time for me to grow up
Right.
and start getting a job and doing all those things. So um, I started getting more depressed. I was locking myself in my room, wouldn't come out for dinner,
Wow.
um, basically isolated from my whole family. Yeah.
I definitely understand that. I mean, that was your love. I mean, that was who you knew as a
Hmm.
parent. So to lose your parent
Yes.
basically as slash grandmother, I mean, that's a big deal. So I can understand you, um, you know, holding the sadness in and then finding an unhealthy outlet to deal with it. I completely understand that. Not only do I understand that, I went through it, when my grandmother passed. So I
Of course. Yeah.
completely understand where you're coming from. Now, going back to your parents, when you said that, your parents basically had their own issues, whether it be drugs or whatever
Mhm.
issues they were dealing with, do you feel like that played a part in you having that anxiety? Like, were you like a victim of circumstance, or do you feel like it was genetic, that it was just in you? Because I believe both may play a
I
part.
I believe the same thing. I believe it's both nature and nurture. I believe
I
a
like that.
lot of a lot of the things in my that I work through mentally and physically, I've come to realize now that me and my mom do have a relationship. She has like 8 or 9 years completely clean and sober. Um, we've talked about mental health and we've talked about like her anxiety and those things and why she was out for so long doing those things. And there's a lot of relation between me and her on our mental health. And I do believe that a lot of my things would have not been triggered. Like a lot of my mental health issues probably wouldn't have been triggered if she was more aware of it when she was younger and I was younger. You know what I mean?
I
Because
can
she would have kept me away from those situations.
absolutely
Um,
I agree with you 100% on that.
but I think it's pretty cool, like to sit and have a conversation about these traumas that I've gone through now. Like we can sit and I could be like, Mom, you left me on that curb that one time and you didn't come back for like
Right.
three hours and Auntie Lisa came to pick me up. And
Right.
she's like, I don't remember that. You know what I mean? So like,
Exactly. No,
and
I actually commend you for that. I actually commend you for, even if you did have a moment of resentment or a time of resentment in your life towards your parents, I think that's big of you to know that she too herself was dealing with something. And basically, when you're going through something like that, you're not in your right frame of mind. You don't even know how to be a parent
right,
and pick the child first, because you too, you're not even putting your own self different when you're being reckless like that and living a drug life, or
exactly.
not getting help for your mental health. Um, now, with you, when you say, so when you first noticed that you started feeling the anxiety, I know your grandmother would call it out, but did anybody ever try to
Hmm.
really address it? Because a lot of families, they call it out, they may assume things are going on, but we really don't push for help. Do you believe that she tried to
I,
get help?
I believe she tried to get help. But I believe with how I don't know if it's the same everywhere, but in Hawaii, it's very mental health isn't. I mean, everywhere, mental health isn't a thing you talk about in families. Like my uncle them used to be like, no, that's him. That's him. He's just a kid. He's just nervous.
Right.
He's just nervous. Or no, he cannot pay attention. So you got to put him in sports. So then he'll pay attention. And then when it comes to game day, here's Gabe over there in the corner picking flowers, not paying attention to the game. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I totally,
I feel like there's always been signs, and it's always been oh, that's just how he is.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but when I finally did go to actually get to see a therapist when I was about 22 and or a psychologist, and I got diagnosed with anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, all of these things, ADHD. My grandma was right. I had
Right,
ADHD.
right.
Um, it was funny because I had told my family, I was like, you know what? All those times grandma wanted me to go see a doctor and you guys told her no, I probably wouldn't have been as out there as I am now.
Right.
But I mean, I feel like I did learn some coping mechanisms, some coping tools as a kid of how to like pull back those emotions. I mean, it was internalizing a lot of issues that I was going through, but as an adult, I feel like when I talk to my younger cousins, I have that ability to be like, "Hey, yo, like I know we don't talk about it, but I get it. If you're anxious, you can text me, you can call me. Like, so I have my cousins, like some of my younger cousins, whenever they're feeling something, they'll call or they'll talk to me about it. So
Exactly. I mean,
might not be a therapist, but I can help them out.
you know what? That's all to me. At the end of the day, that's what's most important. The fact that somebody that you offer it and somebody actually takes you up on that, which means they're comfortable with actually reaching out to you. And then hopefully, if it continues, then you can,
Right.
try and nudge them in the direction of getting help. But I think that that's good, because experience is the best thing. And when you have experienced certain things, I mean, it's easy to give things from your perspective because you've actually dealt with it. So I
Of
definitely
course.
commend you for reaching out and being the one to help the next person. Now I think that that's strong of you. What are some triggers that you noticed put you in that place prior to getting help?
A lot of the triggers that, okay, so for me, things that trigger me a lot is like when somebody keeps asking me what's wrong, and like being asked overly when you're in a manic state or any state where like your brain, when your brain is starting to shut everything out, you're emotionally detaching from things. um I also do pressure points, so I'll be like this, and when I'm already touching my hand like this, it's please stop, give me a second, let me breathe. don't address me right now.
Right.
My triggers tend to be overbearing people. I I guess because like growing up, right? I said when I was going through things, I would pull out, like pull away from everybody, so everybody would just kind of let me collect my emotions.
Right.
So as we are moving into the future, I believe because everybody's so aware of mental health and triggers and like the way people maneuver through their day, most people are trying to help. So
Yeah.
sometimes it happens for me at work too, where I'll get pulled into the office and people will be like, "What's going on? Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I just need to go back to my desk. I need to sit down." Like
Right.
being bombarded and overly cared for gives me anxiety and it triggers me.
Right.
So that day that I went to the doctors to go and get back on my meds, she just had to do her regular consultation. You know, her basic 50 questions. She had to
Right.
ask those questions and be and because I had written it on top of a piece of paper, I had told the nurse, I had told intake. By the time I had sat with her and she was asking me the same questions, I was like, Um, it's in the computer. Instead of me rewriting like telling you this
Right.
again, you could just read the note. And you know what I mean? Like I had to stop. I caught myself
Yeah.
like getting defensive.
Hmm.
So I had responded and was like, "Hey, like I'm sorry. You're triggering my anxiety right now, and it's making me really, really defensive. And
Right.
I don't mean to come off rude, but it's coming off like I need a second." So she allowed me to like take a good 5 minutes. She turned off the light. She was like, "I'm gonna step outside, just relax." And I was like, "Okay," because you're making me anxious.
Right. Right. But I think
So
again, that's a good thing on your part to show rather how much control you do have to a certain extent, because I suffer with depression. Let me say that
mhm,
right now. So I
right.
totally get it. But the fact that you actually can say, hey, give me a moment. I'm getting a little defensive here. I just need a moment. I think that's good to acknowledge when you're reaching that point. Now, my question about the hand gesture, I noticed you said when you're starting to get there, you do that thing with your hands. Do you communicate that? Because I mean, like if I just saw you doing that, I may assume something because it's like he's getting a little antsy. But if it's not being communicated that, hey, this is my trigger warning, then nobody will know what that trigger warning is. Do you communicate it to your
I
close?
do communicate it when, yeah, to my close friends, like all my close friends can know. Um, basically, I would like, we'll joke around, like, say if this is like the third time we hang out, like, I'll be like, okay, when I start getting anxious, you'll notice I cross my legs, like my feet will go like this. And then I'll like sit back and slouch, and then I'll like just smile, and then I'll start tapping on my hand. And I'm like, when everything starts to move from this position, like an open position, to like
Okay.
a,
Yep. Yep.
and then they were like, "Oh, you're really about body language." I was like, "Yeah, like I watch people, and that's the same way I address my clients because now I work at a shelter, and we deal with mental health,
Good work.
and I address the same thing to my clients or like the people I work with. I'm like, all right, homeboy's arms are closed. He's sitting there. That means he don't want to be talked to. Like, just go do whatever he asked you to do, and just do it for him.
Right.
And like, you get your coworkers, and they're like, no, he can do it for himself, and you're like, just do it before you make him mad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean,
So
and we have to, the fact that you, like I think that's a good thing to be able to read those triggers within someone else, especially with you being in that field, because that's important to know
mhm,
someone else's triggers. And when some people do speak with their body language. It may not be verbal. You have to pay attention to people
right.
when you're within a field. And of course, your close loved ones, you become to know them and know when they're starting to feel a certain kind of way. So why do you feel that, two questions. Are you gay? Okay.
Yes.
Second question is, do you believe that that played a part in you being defensive? Because I heard you mention when you become defensive, and that can start off as something small and then fester into something big when it comes to being defensive. Do you believe that played a part in you?
I
Uh,
highly I highly believe that. my homosexuality did come into play with a lot of my mental health issues. Like how you said, I was defensive. I remember all through middle school and high school, the word would trigger me.
Yeah, yeah,
Call me anything under that rainbow, you would trigger me. I would violently react to you. I would
yeah.
not respond well. And coming out, when I did come out, that alleviated a lot of it, like a lot of that trigger warnings. You know what I mean? Um, I wasn't so angry. I was able to just be me. I was able to kind of express myself freely. Um, and so like I do drag. I do drag shows
Oh,
in Hawaii at Scarlet Honolulu. And I go dance too. So
I'm sure.
like, you know what I mean? Like I've been like all up in the community
Right.
nowadays. And um it's funny because like when you met me back in high school or middle school, like just saying the word would make me mad.
Yeah.
Um and I know it was because growing up at the household we grew up in, like I had an auntie, sorry. I had an auntie, she's transgender now.
Okay.
My family still dead names her.
Okay.
They refer to her as him.
Yeah.
And no matter how much I will sit and educate, it goes in one ear, out the other. And it's just always been a thing where we like it, we see it, we enjoy it, we'll watch the show, but you're implementing your lifestyle onto my lifestyle and we aren't there for it. So I think that's where a lot of my anxiety comes from,
Yeah.
is what is acceptable for my family and what do I have to keep away from my family. So even when I did my assessment with the therapist this past time, I had told her majority of times that I have anxiety going in on anything has been with my family.
Oh, I completely get it.
Like if I'm coming to my friends and hanging out with my friends, maybe once or twice will I ever get anxious or
Yep.
depressed.
Yep.
You bring me around my family, everything will come up.
Yeah. I completely
Yeah.
understand that because with your friends, you can be exactly who you are, at least the real ones, and then we use that word
Right.
very sparingly, friends, but the ones that are really friends, you can be your authentic self. And then when it comes to family, there's a certain um I guess a certain image that we have to uphold, especially in different cultures. So we can't be too feminine or we can't be too masculine when we're gay, and we can't be this way,
Right.
that way. So you really can't be your authentic self. And I mean, when you really
Your authentic self. Right.
exactly, I mean, people need to really understand the gist of what that means, your authentic self. And that alone can bring on mental health issues because then you start to question who you are and why you're like this. And then you start to internalize that something may be wrong with you. Did you know that you were gay when you were young? Because I can assume that that definitely played a part in some of the depression.
The funniest thing is, you know what? I can recall about 20 to 30 times my family has called it out that I was gay.
Right, right,
Like growing up. I mean, I was the little boy. Well, because like growing up, I have about like 30, 40 cousins, right? I'm Filipino.
family. Okay.
So we got a bunch of cousins. Yeah. So all my boy cousins that used to play video games or like football outside, they're all like maybe 5 years older than me, 10 years older than me. And the only cousin that I had that was my age was a girl. So we
Okay.
used to play Barbie in the living room all the time.
Right.
And I remember like, we're playing Barbie and I can hear her grandma and her mom them all in the kitchen talking about me being gay and
Yeah.
all these things. And you know what I mean? I believe that I knew. I mean, looking at boys was a little bit different. I used to justify it in middle school as um, I just wanted to look like them. I
Right.
just thought they looked good.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
I
To
completely,
try to tone it down. Yeah,
completely.
because like it was never hearing your friends and your family like talk about like, oh, he gay. Like
Oh, yeah. Oh,
that's wrong.
I get it. The way
So
that one says it, that can and define whether the person will talk to you about it or not. Because you can say, "Oh, he's
right,
gay," and that's fine. But when they put some emphasis on it, it's like, "Oh, I better not tell that person. Let me hide this."
right.
I
And
get
the funniest thing is like my entire family, like all my aunties, they all come to drag shows. Like they'll watch drag shows.
so.
Mind you, my mom will be yelling my boy name the whole time I perform.
Come on, ma.
But you know what I mean? Like they'll come, right? They come to the shows, and it's so funny because like all my younger cousins are told that I'm in a play when I perform.
Right,
So I'm not allowed to be at the house
right.
prior to a show unless I'm wearing the same costume I was wearing before. And I'm like, it don't make sense, Auntie. I was like, like you gotta think about how involved our community is in television, on YouTube videos, in schools. It's everywhere.
Every and
So
they're
like,
not going anywhere. I mean,
and that's why like I had when I had explained to my aunties, all my aunties about it one time, I was like, you know, these are the things that made me take a lot longer to come out.
yeah,
I was like, I came out at 19. Had you guys not made me feel bad about being gay and picking flowers during flag football
you're
or
right,
playing Barbies with my cousins, I was like, you guys know that I would have been able to be my authentic self thoroughly
right.
and not feel anxious the whole time.
Exactly.
And like watching, and that's why I like watching my younger cousins. Sometimes I feel bad because I'm like, you guys are getting the same great upbringing that I was brought into. And like, you can tell your little cousins.
Yeah, yeah,
I know some of them are.
right.
And I'm like, it's okay. It's the ones that jump in my car when I'm going to go to the grocery store that
You
I'm
know
like,
it, and you see the
I
signs. And
got you.
yep, and I'm glad that you're
Right.
doing that. I'm so glad you're doing that because I grew up in the same or similar environment where we're a very large family, very close knit, and I felt that same feeling. Even though our times are different, I'm 51, come from a whole another time than you.
Hmm.
It was the same type of feelings, so I completely can relate
Right.
to what you went through. And I do believe that plays a part in learning to love who you are. And I'm glad that you're at a point or got to a point because it's been a while now that you've come out that you did
Yeah.
that. You got to a point where, you know what, damn it, this is just who I am, man. You're going to either love it or just don't be around me. I mean, I don't know and I hope that
Right.
your aunties can get to a point where, Gabe, what is your performing name?
Hanaho. In
Hana.
Hawaii, that means like encore.
I love it. I
Do it
hope that
again.
your aunties get to a
Yeah.
point where Hannah Hole can be Hannah Hole when she's here. Let that's who I am.
Right.
So accept me for who I am. I'm still the loving
Of course.
person that I was when I was a baby. I'm just grown now. So
Of course.
now I heard you say you went to therapy before. I'm assuming you stopped
Yes.
and alcohol became your crutch.
I stopped. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what made
So,
you stop and then take up alcohol as opposed to truly healing?
so funny thing is, um, because of relationships, that also becomes a part of my mental health and my relapse story. Um, I am very much like my mother, where I am a people pleaser and I will jump into a relationship head on and forget me,
Mhm.
forget all about me. So I had just jumped into a relationship, I think in 2021. I had like been sober for 5 years on medication. Um, I was seeing a therapist every single day or once a week. Sorry. I was seeing a therapist once a week. We were texting on a regular. And then I had gotten into a relationship with somebody. Um, and I was running low on my anxiety, my antidepressants, my anxiety meds, and my insomnia meds. And I remember one night we were in bed, like getting ready for bed, and he was like, "Oh, you should just hit this blunt. Like, just hit this blunt. It'll make you go to bed real quick." And it did that night. Um, so I don't drink, I don't do drugs. Any stimulants I just stay away from because it just triggers my anxiety, it triggers my depression. Self-loathing starts up, you know what I mean? So um I had smoked that joint or that blunt that first night, and I remember the euphoria, feeling so good, fell asleep. It was amazing. Um, and then next thing I knew, I finally did fully run out of my meds. Um, and then I was picking up like grams of weed. I was going to the weed shop and buying like those pens.
Right.
And mind you, 5 years, I was sober for 5 years. These were not accessible in the store back in 2011. Like you
Exactly.
needed a green card for it. You know what I
Right, right.
mean? And I always like laugh because like I'm not real old or anything. Like I'm 30. Like I'm 30. So, but I grew up in the days where you had to go meet the guy at
Oh,
Safeway.
yeah.
You know what I
Oh,
mean?
I
You
know
had to wait
about
in the
that.
parking lot
Right.
for it. So, like the fact that like I was telling my younger cousins, I'm like, you guys get to go in the store
I know.
and look at
Go
all
look.
these things. Like, what? So I had ended up doing that, and then after the weed started making me more anxious, I had substituted the weed for a shot of whiskey before bed, a shot of whiskey and a blunt before bed because it helped.
Yeah, I get it.
Um,
Okay.
and then the shot of whiskey didn't do it.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, I'm at home. I think it was right by December, right before I posted that video of me crying. Um, I was sitting on my couch. Sorry, my dog's scratching right now.
Good. I have two
I
over
was
here.
sitting on my couch with a full bottle of Jameson on like Christmas Eve by myself,
Yeah.
trying to go to bed, just drinking warm whiskey with no chaser straight out the bottle, crying about life,
Yeah.
thinking to myself, how did I get here with 5 years? And realizing that morning when I woke up and I was crying, and I was like, you know why? Because you substituted your medication and your mental health for drugs and alcohol. I was like, it's never going to ever be normal for you to do that. Because for me, at least, I know for me, like once I start drinking, then that little bug in my head is like, now go call your friends, see what they're doing.
Right. Right.
And all throughout last year, I know that I've burnt bridges because majority of the people that I had met in the past 5 years, 5, 6 years, have only seen me completely sober. So they got their handful of traumas this year.
Right.
And I get to like, so the people that are still around in my circle, I get to joke with them, and I'm like, so now you guys understand why for 5 years I had told you I don't drink.
That's what's up.
You guys finally get it. You see why, right? And they're like, no, I get it. Like, we thought it was a joke. We thought you was playing around. I was like, no, I am cuckoo. Like, I go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
The whole world is to me. I mean, I think we all are. Right?
Yeah,
We all have a little bit of
right,
Cocoa Puffs.
right.
I'm just glad that you were able to get to a point, because it's one thing to do that and another thing to acknowledge that, because we're human. We're always going to trip up and make mistakes. The key is to get back up and get back on the right path.
Right.
And I commend you for acknowledging that, and then, getting yourself back into therapy, because let's let everybody know today he is in therapy. Am I correct? Awesome.
Yes.
All right. And so
Therapy.
he's acknowledged.
Therapy helps.
Say what? What'd you say?
Therapy helps. And no,
Exactly.
I sorry. Therapy helps. You know what I mean? And I think that's one thing that like, sorry, I just wanted to say one thing. Like, I
Good.
think that's one thing that that video, waking up that one day in that morning and like recording that video while I'm crying, I'm wholly having a full meltdown.
Right.
It was that instant of making a decision. Okay, you can go down the street for the liquor store and get a bottle again so these intrusive thoughts don't come at you.
Wow.
Or you can get on the phone and call for help, because you can keep going around on this merry-go-round, or you can get off the merry-go-round and go throw up like you need to do. And for me, I think I just needed to stop. Like, I had had enough. Like, my mom always says, sick and tired of being sick and tired. When are you going to be sick and tired of being sick and tired? And I
Oh,
finally was sick and tired of it.
that's hitting the nail on the
Yeah.
head right there. Sick and tired of being sick and tired because, as you stated, it's nothing but a merry-go-round, and you just want to keep going
Mm-hmm.
around and around with no solution, until we just die, or give up one day. So
Right.
the fact that you got back on the meds and got back in therapy is very commendable. So I know that it's not for everybody, and we're not saying that medication is for everybody, but in your case, the
Yeah.
meds do help you.
Yes.
Yeah.
A
So
lot.
now, how are you dealing with do you still have the self-loathing or self pity, or because I know these are some feelings that I felt in the past and I use them. So do you still feel those feelings, but now you know how to deal with them and put them in their place?
So, funny thing is, I was journaling while I was in therapy before. Um, and I had stopped journaling when I had started substituting my meds for alcohol. So I have picked up a new journal. I journal every morning to start out my day with gratitude. I journal when I can't get out of my head, I get out the house. Um, if I'm bored, my dog must be bored. Luna must be bored, so she need to get out too.
Exactly.
Um, you know what I mean? There's
Methods.
been a lot of things I can do that are around the house. Like, I live in a two-bedroom by myself,
Mhm.
and every single time I try to justify that I have nothing to do today, there is always going to be something I can do. Um, I just started painting again.
Good.
Um, I literally found a bag full of yarn the other day that I used to crochet with.
Good.
And I was like, look at
Hey.
all these coping mechanisms that you used
Right,
to
right.
have.
Things just coming
So
right. It's
my
just being brought to you.
yeah, so my mom was laughing. She came over the other day and I was like sitting on the couch watching TV with Luna on my lap, and I'm like crocheting, and she's like, God, you're such an old lady. And I was like, there's nothing else. I was like, leave me alone. It's working. It is
Exactly.
working.
Well, I believe that at the core of everything, like self-love is that's the biggest issue, or the biggest hurdle to cross, is to learn to love yourself and not compromise anything about yourself for someone else. Do you feel that
Right.
therapy now, and you not drinking and doing drugs, that you're getting to that point where you're really looking in the mirror when it's just you and looking at yourself at your core and saying, I love who I am and me? You feel like therapy is helping you do that?
Absolutely. Therapy has been a lot of help, um, kind of bringing me back to me.
Good.
Um, I've been able to kind of look at self and kind of just be happy
Yeah.
that, you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
I got two legs to walk on, I got two arms to move, grab things with, I
Yeah.
have a roof over my head, food on the table. And yes, people help, but I've done these things for me. You know what I
Good.
mean? Like, I've been able to accomplish these things for me. Um, I think that's one thing we all kind of forget, is how great our lives are by the simple things, because of the fact that we all are on social media. We see the things, the lifestyles people live. So you assume, like, oh, she must have a great life because she went to Paris again. We don't know her credit score.
We don't. We sure
You know
don't.
what I mean?
It's so true.
Like,
That's so true.
it's
And
the gratitude of just being able to wake up in the morning for me.
No, and that's a big deal. I mean, because, and that's not to say, like you said earlier, you still do have thoughts. You just found a way to deal with them. You found a way to not even
Hmm.
ignore them. It you found another way to channel those thoughts. And I think that that's commendable as well, because the thoughts don't go away. I mean, if we've been diagnosed, it's just like cancer, for instance. I mean, you can treat it, you treat it, but you've been
Right.
diagnosed with this disease, and there are diseases of the brain, people. Um, and I think that, like you said earlier, mental health is becoming so much more aware, because back in the day, people are telling you to just be tough, don't be weak, but that does not mean you're weak. I think you're
Yep.
strong when you actually acknowledge, hey, something is wrong. I'm having these thoughts. Can you help me? So I'm just glad that you're on that path of positivity and peace.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Now, before I let you go, tell everybody, because we're going to support Gabe, all right, y'all? This is a man trying to stay healthy just like we all are, and he's doing the best that he can. And the way we know he's doing the best is that he's got back into therapy and he's on his medication, no more drugs and alcohol. That says it right there.
Yep.
Let's support Gabe along his journey and follow him. Tell everybody where they can follow you, all your social media information.
Alrighty. So you guys can go ahead and follow me on TikTok at gbueno92. And then Instagram would be the same thing, but underscore gbueno92. Um, and then all my links for like my drag, my Hanaho stuff are all linked on top of my boy IG. So you can follow me on there. Um, I've been using my TikTok to kind of share my journey on my mental health recovery and my also kind of random videos just to make people laugh. So, it's just a normal person doing normal things, just trying to work through life. And you guys can catch me on there, send me a message, let me know if you guys need help with anything. I'm always there to respond hot. Um, my phone's not as wet as it used to be to go out, so I got time.
I know that's
I
right.
got time.
And if you all are ever in Hawaii, why don't you go check her out in the show? Throw some of those
Go
dollars at
check
her.
me out.
And by the way,
Right.
I think
I
your
might just
drag,
get you on my guest list.
there you go. And so I think that, what is your drag name again?
Hanaho.
Anaho, who is so beautiful, because trust me, I done already looked you. I've seen it. I done seen her. I've watched you, and she is beautiful, and so are you.
Thank you so
You're
much.
very welcome. Well,
Thank you so much for this opportunity again.
oh yeah, man, you got it. I have one last question before I let you go.
Yeah,
Will
let's
you
do it.
promise? Will you promise to always spread peace and love in this world?
Always peace, love, and light.
I thank you.
Thank you so much.
I thank you so much for joining me, Gabe, and you take care.